I'm here with Mitch Resnick, and we're going to talk about some of the interesting things that he's been doing at the Media Lab. His sub-theme for the conference is making, tinkering, and remixing. So why don't you tell me what that means in your world, Mitch?
Well, I think one thing that we've seen is that the best learning experiences come when people are actively engaged in designing things, creating things, inventing things, expressing themselves. So it's not just a matter of giving people opportunities to interact with technologies or use technologies, but if we want people to really be fluent with new technologies and learn through their activities, it really requires people to get involved as makers, to create things. So that takes the first word of making. We also think that there's certain styles of making that we want to highlight. That it's not just a matter of coming up with a plan, a blueprint, and executing it. A lot of the best experiences come when you're making use of the materials in the world around you, tinkering with things around you, and coming up with a prototype, getting feedback, and then iteratively changing it, making new ideas over and over, adapting to the current situation and the new situations that arrive. So that's what we mean by tinkering. So it's about making and tinkering, but also this is not done in isolation. You're building on the works of others, and that's where remixing comes in. So I think, again, a lot of the best learning doesn't happen when you're just sitting there like Rodin's thinker by yourself, but when you're taking the works of others, taking a piece from here, a piece from there, and putting them together in new ways. So that's making, tinkering, and remixing. And at the conference, we'll want to be exploring what are the new technologies, the new activities, the new social contexts that can support making, tinkering, and remixing.
I see behind you on the shelf there what look like bins of Legos and other toys. And I know you've done a lot of work with Legos. How is a toy an educational technology or a learning technology?
Well, again, I do think that play is an important part of our experimenting in the world. So tinkering and remixing are forms of play. So in fact, I tend to be, these days, there's a lot of excitement around games. Actually, I get more excited about toys, letting people sort of play with things in the world, build up new things in the world. So we've always tried to see how can we let people learn through playful invention to be able to take things in the world around them and make new things out of them. So we've done that some with the Lego company for many years. We've been adding digital technology to the traditional Lego bricks so that kids can build not just houses and castles, but things that move and interact and react and sense and communicate. So that's a big part of what we do. Although we want to bring those same ideas to the computer screen. So there should be toys on the screen that let you, design and create and playfully invent new things on the screen. It's like we have this software called Scratch that lets kids design their own interactive stories and games and animations, and then share their creations with one another online. So I think those are some of the approaches we've taken here on making and tinkering and remixing, and we're excited at the conference to hear about the ways that many other people are following up on those themes.
So what about the institutional framework? It sounds like for those parents who are tuned in enough and can afford it, although it's not terribly expensive, the right kind of toys are helpful for their children's learning. But of course, learning in its institutional form takes place in educational settings. To what degree how do you see the kind of instruments, learning instruments and toys that and kinds of play that you're working on fitting in or finding its way into learning institutions, into schools?
Well, we do see some of the things that we've been creating do get into schools and often used very well, but sometimes they get sort of co-opted into the approaches of school, and it sometimes strips away the creativity from the activity. So I think it's not enough just for us to be developing these technologies, but also to be rethinking how the institutions are using the technology. Over time, I think we do need to rethink educational institutions as a place that embrace playful experimentation. That doesn't happen enough today, and I think that's one of the things that we need to support, new ways of supporting and thinking about how educational institutions could shift to learn more from informal spaces. We've done a lot in after school settings where we see many kids who have been unsuccessful in traditional educational settings become incredibly successful when they're given the opportunity to make, tinker, and remix. And I think there are lessons for schools from the ways that kids learn outside of schools, and we want to be able to support that type of learning both inside and outside of schools.
So I know that you've done this work with Legos, which is pretty classically tinkering, and Scratch sounds like making, or vice versa. What about remixing? What can you concretely describe some of the tools or toys that you think are going to be useful that you're working on in that regard?
Yeah. Well, actually, the work we've done with Scratch really highlights the possibilities of remixing, where kids can share their Scratch creations on the website in an online community. And there are now 2 million projects that kids have shared. And about a third of those projects are remixes of other people's projects. So it means the kids found a project on the website they liked, went inside and changed some of the program or changed some of the media, the images, the sounds, and then put it back up there. So you'll see some projects that be remixed dozens or even hundreds of times, and they're constantly learning from one another. So you get to see the ideas spreading through the community as kids remix one another's projects.
What's the URL for Scratch?
That would be scratch.mit.edu, or just Google Scratch and you'll be able to find it.
Okay, great, wonderful. I'm looking forward to seeing you at the conference, and thanks very much.
Great. Well, I look forward to seeing you, and look forward to getting some great proposals for people to share their ideas about making, tinkering, and remixing.
Great. Bye-bye.
Okay.